Welcome back. Africans are making the list of migrants crossing into Europe. Those leaving are coming mainly from Northern Africa, Libya, where there has been political unrest since the death of Muammar Gaddafi. And what's saddening is that they are paying huge sums of money to get on small boats across the Mediterranean. Some are also coming from northern Nigeria, Niger and Cameroon, fleeing Boko Haram's insurgency. I was discussing the migrant crisis with my colleague at the Voice of America, Jeffrey Young, who has covered conflict areas in his many years as a journalist. And he says Europe is faced with the dilemma of what to do if it shuts its doors to these migrants.
I'm sure that they're already talking about it, but we have to look at what repatriation would mean. If you're coming out of a conflict zone somewhere in Africa and your final place on the continent was Libya, what, repatriation to Libya in the middle of a civil war? Repatriation to Syria in the middle of not only a civil war, but also the Islamic State? On humanitarian grounds, one really cannot look at repatriation as a solution.
Now, the growing number of migrants trying to get in has also caused some worry for the host countries, who are more concerned about their security, because let's face it, in the most of genuine migrants seeking help, there could be some elements of terrorism trying to get in as well.
They are coming into Europe in droves. This year has seen a growing number of them making the treacherous journey despite the growing number of deaths at sea. Migration itself has been perceived as part of the human journey, and according to the head of the UN Economic Commission for Africa, Carlos Lopez, African countries receive a lot more migrants than the continent exports abroad, supporting this by saying that the bulk of Africans looking for opportunities outside their countries go to another African country, and fewer than 2 million seek a destination abroad every year, which is very little number when compared to migrant stocks. This year, the most number of migrants going by the Mediterranean route is said to have come from Syria. Others have come from Libya and its surrounding deserts, the Great Lakes and their neighborhood, which have experienced pockets of war. But the most determined of the migrants have come from Africa, who do not accept their fate and are ready to risk their lives. Europe provides the greatest attraction, with its variety of developments from access to information, human rights proclamations, and a call for universal moral values. The vast majority of migrants who leave from Libya end up in Italy or Greece and Malta. The European Union's Dublin regulation says that the first EU country a migrant gets to must take responsibility for him. Germany, France and Britain have complained they're taking more refugees and migrants, both because of migration along other routes and because southerners encourage migrants to move northwards. European and African heads of state are scheduled to meet in Malta in November to discuss the Mediterranean migration crisis, and experts say it is time to address economic possibilities in sub-Saharan Africa. As for asylum seekers, last year, nearly 104,000 got refugee status in the EU, nearly 60,000 subsidiary protection status, and just over 20,000 authorization to stay for humanitarian reasons. Germany made the highest number of positive asylum decisions in 2014.
Since we've mentioned the issue of terrorism, the Nigerian military is confident of fulfilling the president's command of wiping out Boko Haram in 3 months. Yesterday, the Deputy Director, Army Public Relations and spokesperson, 7th Division Nigerian Army, Maiduguri, Colonel Tukur Gusau, supervised the destruction of food items recovered from Boko Haram worth 50 million naira. According to Colonel Gusau, the military has crippled Boko Haram's supply of fuel, logistics and everything. While we wait results of the multinational joint task force, Ghana has commended Nigeria's efforts at curbing the insurgency. The country's Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection said the country also supports Nigeria's fight against terrorism.
I believe it's work in progress, and we can see, especially let me applaud the role of Nigeria in the sub-region, in addressing some of these issues and in addressing the conflict-related issues. Way back decades ago, we all know the role Nigeria played in addressing the conflicts that occurred in Liberia. We also know in Cote d'Ivoire, where Nigeria was one of the first countries to send equipment in terms of 2 airplanes to address the issue of the conflict. So Nigeria has played a leading role in the sub-region in addressing conflict and terrorism. Recently, I was with our President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, at the AU Summit in January in Ethiopia, and this issue came up. There was actually a meeting with the heads of states in West Africa to discuss some of these issues. I would call in mind the Chibok girls, because that also, and the efforts that not only at within Nigeria, but even at the sub-regional level. With our president being the chair or president of ECOWAS, I had the opportunity to be the president or the chair of all gender ministers in ECOWAS. And we met in Senegal in January and February, and we actually issued a declaration asking for an unconditional release of the Chibok girls. We should understand that terrorism affects the genders in different ways. And from what happened with the Chibok girls, we see that women and children, especially girls, are most vulnerable. And because they become the objects, they become the objects of the war. They're used as sex slaves, they're used as slaves, and the mercenaries capture. That's what we're seeing, capture. We look at the Lord's Resistance Army, what has happened with some of these girls. And then even increasingly, some of the young girls are recruited and actually used as suicide bombers.
Coming up on Diplomatic Channel, our interview with former Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Chief Richard Akinjide. Just stay with us.